February 5, 1996 Wrestling Observer Newsletter. World Wrestling Festival, WWF and WCW agree to participate while in middle of bitter promotional war, tons more. By Observer staff. Wrestling Observer Newsletter. P.O. Box 1228, Campbell, California 950091228. February 5, 1996. For the first time in the history of wrestling, nearly every major wrestling promotion in the United States, Japan and Mexico have come to an agreement this past week to combine for a show tentatively titled the World Wrestling Festival on May 18, which is currently planned either the Los Angeles Sports Arena or the adjacent Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. The show, put together by Antonio Inoki and Steve Nakata, the executive director of the Japan-US Sports Federation, at press time has verbal and/or written agreements to participate from the WWF, WCW, AAA, EMLL, and New Japan Pro Wrestling. It was well known all along about the latter three companies being part of the show, and it was expected that WCW, with its working agreement with New Japan, would also play a part in it. Nakata met with Linda McMahon on January 25 in Las Vegas, the president of Titan Sports, and got her to agree for them to put a match on the same stage as their bitter rivals, WCW. It is expected that UWF International, which is basically a subgroup of New Japan, along with Rings and Pancrase, will reach an agreement to be part of the show perhaps by the time you read this. In addition, All Japan Pro Wrestling has been invited, and there has been talk of a women's match on the show involving independent Japanese women legends Bull Nakano and Akira Hokuto. The expected main event will be a rematch of the Inoki vs. Big Van Vader match from the Tokyo Dome. All Japan has been basically an isolationist promotion ever since the aftermath of the 1990 US and Japan Pro Wrestling Summit, when it spearheaded a show with both WWF and New Japan at the Tokyo Dome. For a trivia note, to show how much the world changes, the opening match on that card was a 15-minute draw between Bret Hart and Mitsuharu Misawa, which wound up in a major war of egos between All Japan and WWF and resulted in an end of All Japan working with any other offices. However, All Japan did send its top wrestlers to a similar show involving 13 Japanese offices at the Tokyo Dome on April 2, 1995. The show, which will be the headline event of a 3-day international festival which will also include a World Food Festival and other international entertainment activities, similar to the production the North Korean government put on in late April, is expected to become an annual affair put together by Inoki. Inoki has already talked about running a similar event in 1997 at 130,000-seat Azteca Stadium in Mexico City, and an event in either 1997 or 1998 in Havana, Cuba, after his meeting with Fidel Castro last week, where Castro in return named a small island in Cuba Inoki Island. The show's design is to bring attention to promoting racial harmony and peace, which is ironic considering both the American and Mexican companies have in both the past and present placed a significant business emphasis on promoting xenophobia and ill will toward those of different races or ethnicities. The organizing committee has promised to treat all promotions and wrestlers equally with the same type of treatment the city gave the participants in the 1994 World Cup. Whatever profit from the show will be used to open a wrestling school in the Los Angeles area. Nakata will attempt to raise money for the project through the business community in Los Angeles. According to those close to the project, Linda McMahon was impressed with the idea being part of something of this type with so much community grassroots support could help elevate the image of pro wrestling in the United States. Eric Bischoff of WCW was the only company head-to-head support, saying that his company would only be involved if the committee promises to treat WCW and WWF on equal footing and if the proposal gets approved by the executive committee. Similar to the weekly pro wrestling show at the Tokyo Dome last year, each promotion will send one match and book its own finish. At the weekly pro show, the original belief was that the smaller promotions would send its best workers and the larger groups would send mid-card wrestlers to show a presence. However, the competitive nature of the wrestling business, with people attempting to make their company look best, wound up with virtually every promotion sending in a main event caliber match. I'd say it's a virtual lock that both AAA and EMLL will send its strongest match possible. From a wrestling standpoint, it will be the first time anything resembling this has ever taken place on an international basis, with the closest thing being last year's Tokyo Dome, which involved 13 different promotions, however all were Japanese promotions. Unlike the report in last week's issue, Paco Alonso, EMLL, and Antonio Pena, AAA, were not at the same meeting with Inoki in Mexico City. Alonso didn't attend, but did send representatives Jose Painono, programmer, and Negro Casas, booker, for the press conference where Inoki announced the Los Angeles show and talked about a proposed show next year in Mexico City. Also at the press conference besides Pena were Mascara Sagrada, El Mexicano and Tinieblas Jr. of AAA, Victor Mar, Black Cat of New Japan Pro Wrestling, Benjamin Mora, promoter now affiliated with AAA, Marcos Moreno, promoter now affiliated with AAA who was the father-in-law of Ultimo Dragon, Juan Herrera, a longtime power force in both AAA and EMLL and head of Revolution Pro Wrestling or CMLL, and Carlos Maines, head of UWA. Inoki also attempted to get Bischoff and Vince McMahon to meet together while both were in Las Vegas. However, he ended up having a meeting with Bischoff on January 24 at the MGM Grand Hotel, and Nakata had a meeting with Linda McMahon the next morning. There is no word on pay-per-view or video release, which I would think would tend to get very complicated since both WWF and WCW have scheduled pay-per-view events within 8 days of the show. In fact, there is a WCW pay-per-view the very night day, and a UFC the day before, and I doubt either would participate if the show were to be put on pay-per-view. However, there has been talk of an announcing team being put together for the show. The show will be most interesting in regard to crowd reactions and makeup. The Los Angeles market has two diverse wrestling crowds, basically the American and the Mexican-American, and for the most part, never shall the twain meet. Past experience has shown that there is no such thing as a crossover audience between the two. Depending upon how the show is marketed, a show like this could be an exception. However, the nature of the lure of wrestling fans makes this problematic in selling to wrestling fans. Mexican-American fans have little interest in either American or Japanese style. The traditional American audience has even less interest or knowledge of the product on an international basis than the Mexican audience. While there is a large Japanese community in Los Angeles, in the recent past it has never supported pro wrestling or drawn any support even when the top stars from Japan like Great Muta or Giant Baba have appeared in the market. Although if we go back more than 30 years, Rikidozen and Baba did sell out the Olympic Auditorium as babyfaces on top. If promoted as an international cultural event, which is certainly something different for pro wrestling in America, perhaps it could draw well as sumo tournaments have done huge business in San Jose. If anything, the strongest group and most vociferous group potentially to draw from would be the Mexican Americans, which would mean the AAA match has the best chance to steal the show. However, with the cancellation of the local television show, that style is no longer widely available on television in its community because the cable penetration of Galavision is relatively weak. One wonders if WWF and/or WCW will push the event on its local television. It is expected that the Galavision show will push the show huge, but again, it has limited penetration. While WWF and WCW agreed to participate in a show to promote peace and racial harmony, on television the level of cheap shots in their personal promotional war reached a record low. The WWF was clearly the aggressor on the January 29 Raw, bringing up a letter sent by Eric Bischoff on January 23 to McMahon threatening legal action for the billionaire Ted skits. The letter was referred to on several occasions and even shown once. They claim that same executive, whose name wasn't mentioned, as they are positioning the war as being between poor unfortunate Vince McMahon against a man with $4 billion who wants to run him out of business and doesn't care about wrestling fans, rather than a McMahon war with Bischoff, called on January 17, saying to keep doing the skits. This was the phone call Bischoff made to gloat about the 3.5 to 2.4 Monday Night ratings win on January 15. The WWF attempted to position themselves as not backing down from the legal threats. It is expected this is a WWF strategy because since Turner owns the likeness to Hogan, Savage and Ted Turner for licensing and marketing purposes, there's probably no way they'll be able to do that pay-per-view match. They could put it on free television as satire, but they can't use it for marketing purposes. If the Turner lawyers get the skit squashed at Mania, which is a good chance, WWF will position it as the big bad billionaires' lawyers are keeping up from giving you the product we want to entertain you with. Doak Hendricks then said, "Well, you asked for it." This week's skit was a press conference with Ted while Nacho Man and Huckster were in the background posing. Ted said that he's not a hillbilly and doesn't wear cheap suits, a phraseology from Titan's own planted item in the New York Daily News a few weeks ago that intended to imply that Turner is more concerned upset with the skits, not because they pointed out a steroid problem in the company, but because they made him personally look silly. They had reporters asking Ted questions like how come he had twice as many wrestling television shows as WWF but undercut them on ad rates, how come if he owned a network he could put wrestling on at any time on any night, and basically that he decided to put a show on against Raw because he wanted to put the WWF out of business and didn't care about wrestling fans, which is the storyline they are trying to portray. They had the Huckster character say, "It's in my contract with billionaire Ted that I never lose," which I believe is the case, and WWF knows it. They had a copy of Hogan's WCW contract to use if need be for cross-examination in the trial in 1994, since WWF was given the option by his agreement with them of a right to match WCW's contract terms, and he'd stay with WWF, but the terms were so huge financially to Hogan that McMahon declined to match the figure. A lot of people were shocked McMahon would go to the lengths to imply on a wrestling television show that is in certain wrestlers' contracts regarding their right to never have to lose matches, and basically say his competitors' match results were fixed, and to take a personal jab at Turner regarding a medical affliction he suffers from. The piece ended with a nervous Ted saying, "Jane, where's my lithium?" Bischoff, who had kept quiet on Nitro for 2 weeks after the piece aired, responded out of nowhere to those watching with a "forget about it, Vince. Get a job in a pizza parlor." He and Steve McMichael threw a few knocks later in the show, saying Medusa was more of a man than Goldfarb, rather than Goldust, and Eric said that maybe she should have stayed in the WWF and taken on some of the men they have wrestling for them. In something people thought they would never live long enough to see, Hulk Hogan put Ric Flair over for the first time on the January 29 Nitro show from Canton, Ohio. The match finish saw Arnold Anderson get one of Elizabeth's high heels and give it to Flair, who hit Hogan in the eye with it. Hogan juiced it, and they showed a close-up of it, so they must have gotten TNT to alter its standards, and laid down for the 3 count in 14:09. The match itself, 1 1/4 stars, wasn't good at all before the surprise finish, consisting of the same Hogan-Flair spots mainly built around Hogan's pitiful clotheslines. The result probably stemmed from all the noise Flair had been making about wanting to quit over the past week because he didn't like them taking the title off him so quickly, and that he felt he was again going to be used as Hogan's stepping stone. The match was originally booked for a Hogan leg drop finish, and Flair had agreed to it. But as happens on a fairly regular basis, Hogan showed up on Monday and changed the booking around. It is believed nobody in WCW had any advanced knowledge of the implications of the McMahon skit going on head up, so Hogan doing a job was just a weird coincidence rather than a response. After the final match on Nitro, a Randy Savage vs. Giant match that went 28 with Savage DQ'd for hitting him from behind with the belt, Flair came in, and with Giant they destroyed Savage. This lasted several minutes before Hogan came in, all taped up, and clocked Giant and a series of Fall Guys, Meng one-man gang, Kevin Sullivan, Hugh Morris, with chair shots to the head. A lot of notes regarding upcoming pay-per-view events. The pay-per-view, taped a few weeks back at the Dallas Sportatorium, will air nationally on February 2nd in a 2-hour tape priced at $19.95. The show is entitled Wrestling Team Championships, billed as having live interviews at Alcatraz Prison. The hype claims the show will pit the Dallas Bodyguards versus Alcatraz Bandits in 5-man teams fighting 4 15-minute quarters, billed as coming from Alcatraz Prison, although obviously it's from Dallas. In an apparent response to WWF having a cage match headlining its February 18th In Your House show, WCW has responded by making both the Hulk Hogan vs. Giant and Randy Savage vs. Ric Flair title matches cage matches. Originally, Hogan vs. Giant was going to be a Falls Count Anywhere match. Switching it to a cage actually has a double upside. On the television over the weekend in interviews, it was pushed hard that there would be blood in one or both of these matches. At this point, since blood has been used so sparingly in recent years by WWF and WCW, it'll probably be very effective for the next several months. Like everything else in wrestling, if it works, which it will for the short term, it'll end up being overdone and not mean much. WWF has revamped the In Your House show on February 18th in Louisville. The original cage match main event with Bret Hart vs. Diesel and the Owen Hart vs. Shawn Michaels match are the only matches remaining from the original card. Razor Ramon vs. Goldust for the IC title at press time had been changed to Ramon vs. 1-2-3 Kid, with the loser having to suck on a baby bottle and wear a diaper. There may be problems with this match, as apparently both Kid and Ramon were against doing this match. Kid extremely so, since he'd probably be the one on the losing end. Apparently, after the decision was made and Kid was informed, a combination of this and other things got him so depressed he left the tour for a few days and missed a few shots, but did return on January 26th in Madison Square Garden, but on that show put Duke Droese over in a squash match, and by Sunday was again off the card in Philadelphia. However, since they plugged the match on Raw, it appears it's going to happen. The Jeff Jarrett vs. Ahmed Johnson rematch, which will take place as a dark match in the building, has been changed to a rematch of Hunter Hearst Helmsley vs. Droese, stemming from the angle where Helmsley cut off the long part of Droese's hair on January 23rd in San Jose. Undertaker vs. Yokozuna has been switched, since they decided to turn Yokozuna to Yokozuna vs. Davey Boy Smith. And the tag title match between Smoking Guns vs. Body Donnas will now be a dark match rather than a pay-per-view match, so the current plan is for a 5-match show to give each match time to develop. They will obviously shoot many angles for WrestleMania on the show, and the plan is for Vader to be on the show probably for an angle with Yokozuna. The WWF is claiming a 1.2 buy rate for Royal Rumble. Request sources pretty well confirm that, claiming a 1.1 national estimate, which would be 265,000 buys and a $3.56 million company gross, which are figures that defy explanation given the trends in the industry of late. It is clear that the catfighting on television, along with a more violent style in the ring and going back to juice, is increasing overall interest in both products. Both companies are also going balls out to bring back big names from the past and prominently feature them, and it's getting a lot of people who have lost interest in wrestling over the past few years back to the table. The reports we have from WWF are that the show shocked everyone both in the WWF and the pay-per-view industry, coming off the string of nosediving buy rates, and nobody was at all expecting this even within WWF. The number of buys more than tripled the December WWF pay-per-view show, even though this show saw the price increase to $29.95. The total gross would be a figure that, with the exception of WrestleManias, hasn't been approached on any show except big boxing events or the Howard Stern deal in a few years. No doubt the Shawn Michaels angle worked huge, given the huge gates for his return at the arenas this past week as well. What is totally inexplicable was the awful television ratings across the board for all WWF programming the week after Michaels' announcement of his return. For whatever this is worth, the most surprising WCW buy rate of the past few years was the 1992 Halloween Havoc in Philadelphia, Spin the Wheel, Make the Deal, which was one of the all-time worst shows in history, but drew double the buy rate WCW had been doing at that point in time and actually came close to the Flair Hogan numbers. Both shows had Jake Roberts in common. UFC 8 will take place 2 days earlier, February 16 from Ruben Rodriguez Arena in Bayamon, Puerto Rico. Besides, the Ken Shamrock vs. Chemo match for the World Superfight Championship will be a tonnage versus technique tournament. There have been 2 changes in the last 2 weeks, with Joel Sutton and John Hess dropping out. The tournament will largely feature unknowns to UFC fans, with the idea of creating new stars for later in the year. First round matches were determined ahead of time, with fighters of 200 pounds or less with strong technique facing 300-pounders in the first round. The bracketing has Don Fry, a 200-pound judoka from Arizona, facing Thomas Ramirez, a 340-pounder from Puerto Rico billed as representing Pacquiao Chan. Jose Moreira, a 189-pound Brazilian jiu-jitsu protege of Rorion Gracie of some note, faces 325-pound Paul Verlins. Jerry Bolander, a 200-pound student of Ken Shamrock's from Lockford, California, faces Scott Ferrozzo, a 335-pounder from Las Vegas billed as a pit fighter, which I think is a euphemism for thug, and Paul Herrera, a 190-pound former college wrestler from Nebraska who is now Tank Abbott's regular tag team partner in bar fights in Southern California, facing Gary Goodridge, a 270-pounder from Ontario billed as representing Kook Sul 1, whatever that means. At press time, I don't know much at all about any of these competitors other than Moreira is supposed to be the real deal, which I guess would make him a favorite. Verlins is well known to those who watch UFC. Bolander is relatively inexperienced, having won a shoot fight in November in Honolulu and has had maybe 6 months of training in submission. And Herrera is a good wrestler and a very aggressive individual who claims he's gone into the jiu-jitsu dojos in Southern California and made the guys tap. For trivia notes, he's also apparently the guy who did the number on Patrick Smith in the hotel lobby in Casper, Wyoming. The alternates are Duzalberto, shoot fighting, from Florida, a former pro wrestler from many years ago who went by the name Haiti Kid Berto and tag-teamed with Tyree Pride in Florida and has a decent amount of experience in for now defunct PWFG in Japan, and I believe was trained by the Malenkos. Keith Malk, Judo, Jerry Harris, the kickboxer who lost to Verlins in Buffalo, and Sam Adkins, a 276-pound boxer. The following UFC will be the first fight card rather than tournament, tentatively set for May 17 in Detroit. The headline match will have Dan Severn challenge for the Superfight title against the Shamrock Chemo winner. The semifinal will be Oleg Toktarov versus Marco Ruiz with an extended time limit. There will be 4 other matches featuring the likes of Tank Abbott, David Beneteau, and the debut of Koji Kao. The first UFC clone to officially bite the dust is the World Combat Championships, run by Christopher Peters, which amidst lots of support from martial arts magazines drew an estimated 0.18 buy rate for its debut show from Winston-Salem last year, and declared bankruptcy. They were attempting through a distributor to sell tapes of the first event to European television as a one-time special at NATPE this past week. There was a second event scheduled with the date moved back at least twice before finally the company going under. Both Bart Valley and Renzo Gracie, who appeared to come out of the show as the 2 strongest competitors, have attempted to get into UFC. UFC appears to have an unofficial policy, not etched in stone, of not using any fighters that have worked opposition shows. Some notes regarding the rating for the Clash of the Champions on January 23. The total viewing audience, 3.02 million homes, was the largest ever for a WCW show or for wrestling ever on TBS because cable is in more homes now than it was in 1994 when Flair and Hogan drew the same 4.5 rating in Wichita. It wasn't the largest audience ever to watch wrestling on television as claimed by Tony Schiavone on WCW Saturday Night, as every WWF show on NBC and Fox had a much larger audience, and the 1988 WWF Royal Rumble on USA also had a larger audience, not to mention that in a country 1/3 the size of the US, that Televisa probably does double the number of viewers every Saturday night, and the New Japan Dome special probably did triple the number of viewers in a country that's got half as many people. I suppose the latter 2 points don't count, but he did say the largest audience to watch wrestling ever on television, and I think foreign countries fit into the category of ever, since they do have television in those countries. The return of Elizabeth and the mainstream publicity regarding Kevin Green helped the rating, but the biggest help of all appears to have been Bill Clinton. Because all three networks carried the State of the Union and the Republican response, viewership of cable television hit an all-time high on Tuesday night. Overall viewership of cable was up 18% from a typical Tuesday night in prime time. Even 30 and 40-year-old shows like Bewitched and I Love Lucy on Nick at Night did record ratings 3.4+, as did at least 5 different cable networks during the same time period. The Clash was the highest-rated cable show of the night, and even if you take 18% off the number, you still would have a strong rating for a Clash. The peak audience of 3.55 million homes for the main event was well behind the Flair-Hogan cable TV record, but was among the 5 most watched main event matches ever on cable. Top 3 are Hogan vs. Flair in 1994, Sting vs. Black Scorpion and Flair vs. Luger both in 1990. This main event and Flair vs. Funk I Quit match in 1989 were neck and neck for 4th place. Based on the results, the Pancrase pay-per-view show, which took place on January 28 at the Yokohama Bunka Gym, seems like it will be a strange show for the debut of the style to the American audience. The card was taped by Semaphore Entertainment Group for a April 13 showing. It was moved from March to April in order to avoid being anywhere near the Tyson Frank Bruno scheduled for pay-per-view for March 16, which is expected to do $50 million plus. 4 of the 8 matches went the time limit, 3 of which ended with winners via judges' decisions. Pancrase, even more than UFC, is going to be the subject of a lot of controversy within pro wrestling circles about whether it is live or Memorex, if you get my drift, especially if it catches on. Outside of pro wrestling, my feeling is there will be no controversy as to the reality issue. I think the odds are against it catching on, but the odds are better for it this year than they would have been a year earlier, judging from the crowd reactions at the last UFC show, and people have more of an understanding of submissions. Many in wrestling are either so warped by their own lack of reality and incredible suspicions that they believe UFC is a work, which it isn't. In the case of Pancrase, we have something that began as pro wrestling, where many of the top stars got started as pro wrestlers, and unlike UFC, is pro wrestling, except perhaps a sport version of it rather than a worked entertainment version. Those within Pancrase and its supporters will deny there is anything worked about these matches. Others, no doubt, like those who believe UFC is a work, and the NFL is a work, will either claim it's all a work or that some of the undercard matches are shoots, but when the top guys go at it, those matches have finishes pre-planned. For those who want to steadfastly cling to either extreme, in those cases both are wrong, at least based on a conversation I had with one of the competitors, not one of the Shamrocks. What's exactly right is a lot harder to determine and has probably changed as the group has evolved over the past few years. As best I can tell, it's the most legitimate and realistic form of pro wrestling that has been around in our lifetime. Semaphore Entertainment Group is marketing this as pure sport, highly publicizing the rules in its media presentation, and cross-marketing this to its UFC audience as a sport version of UFC. In their promo package, they aren't building this around Shamrock or, for that matter, pushing any specific names, and they avoid the term pro wrestling in all material, pushing it as a hybrid style of martial arts and wrestling, or phraseology like, the newest, hottest, most exciting martial arts sport from Japan. The announcers on the first pay-per-view show, and voiceovers are going to be done in studio rather than announcing done live at the show, are Bruce Beck and Don Wilson, or the UFC crew minus Jeff Blatnick. Ken Shamrock is the top draw for both groups. Within the cable community, there appears to be a lot of enthusiasm for the product, with the idea it may be similar enough to UFC to eventually draw profitable numbers, but will come without the baggage and controversy UFC brings to everyone involved. Semaphore Entertainment Group has decided to put the first 2-hour show on with a $9.95 price tag, with the idea that the low price may cause more people to sample the show out of curiosity. We've seen with wrestling that raising and lowering prices seem to have little effect on number of buys, other than the effect that would be the opposite one would expect. In most cases, the higher the price, the more people buy the show. Pancrase rules forbid elbow strikes, knee strikes, fist strikes to the head, face, throat or neck. Body punching is legal. Headbutts, attacking the groin, heel submission holds, attacking an opponent who has been knocked down, attacking while the referee is attempting to separate the fighters, attacking less than 4 fingers at once, grabbing hold of the opponent's ring outfit, biting, thumb or finger thrusts, hair pulling and attacking the toes. Fighters receive 1 caution, yellow card as in soccer, for a first violation, a red card for a second violation, and a disqualification for a third violation, although you rarely see flagrant violations of the rules. The cards figure into the scoring system if the fight goes the distance, with 1 lost point for every red card. The match can end via knockout, submission, referee or doctor stopping, or by 3 lost points in a 10-minute time limit or 5 lost points in a 20 minutes time limit. Lost points are 1 each for red cards, going to the ropes to break a hold, or for knockdowns, or via disqualification. If a match goes the time limit, the man with the fewest lost points gets the decision. If both have the same number, 2 judges and the referee pick the winner based on the criteria of standing attacking, ground wrestling, and near submissions. On the first show before a sellout crowd announced at 5,900, I don't believe legit they could put much more than 5,000 in that arena. Frank Shamrock, the 23-year-old adopted younger brother of Ken, captured the King of Pancrase World Heavyweight title, beating Minoru Suzuki in 22:53 with a knee cross. I've become a big fan of this style through the videos, and Frank Shamrock is consistently the most exciting fighter to watch because of his quickness in maneuvering on the mat. The title was vacant due to an injury to Boss Rutan, who is expected to challenge Shamrock for the title in May at Budokan Hall, which will probably be the second show taped for American pay-per-view. The big surprise was in the semi-final, where Ken went the distance 20 minutes, with Yoshiki Takahashi, a 189-pound Japanese undercard wrestler, winning via decision. One would think if this was a work, that they certainly wouldn't want Ken not decisively beating his foe on the first pay-per-view, since he's the most marketable and only well-known fighter in the company, especially considering the air date of this is 1 month before what presumably would be Ken defending his UFC title against Dan Severn on a much bigger pay-per-view event from the same company. They also almost certainly wouldn't want half the matches to go to the time limit on the first pay-per-view show. I'm not vouching for anything until I see it myself. Whatever Pancrase is, there are still paranoid skeptics who cling to the claim that Semaphore Entertainment Group cost itself an estimated $600,000 going overtime in the Marco Ruiz-Paul Berlins match on purpose just to prove that it wasn't a work. In the other matches, Masakatsu Funaki beat Ryushi Yanagisawa when the referee stopped the match in 8:42, Jason D. Lucia won with a shoulder submission over Katsuomi Inagaki in 4:56, Takaku Fuke won via decision after 10 minutes over Leon Dyke, Guy Mesger won via decision after 10 minutes over Gregory Smeet. Asami Shibuya went to a 10-minute draw with Kunyoki Kuma, and Yuki Kondo won via referees stopping the match in 2:21 over Takafumi Ito. In one night in 1994, the Super J Cup, a multi-promotional tournament involving some of the best lighter weight wrestlers internationally, gained a reputation as one of the biggest events of the wrestling year. As mentioned many times in these pages, the first Super J Cup was among the greatest shows in wrestling history. The second J Cup was 6 weeks ago, December 13th at Tokyo Sumo Hall to be exact. It was never televised. The videotape was just released by Wrestle Association a few weeks ago, and a show of this caliber, with this many promotions and variety of talents and styles involved, merits a detailed rundown. It's interesting because WAR released the video with no match commentary, and I found it to be more enjoyable because the crowd pops take you up and down and you come out of it with more of a feel like you're at the event rather than the feeling of watching a television show. All Japan Women and FMW have released tapes like this in the past, and to get away with it, you need to have an awesome show with great crowd heat, and also great production values of the shoot. Fortunately, this show had all that. It goes without saying that this is a must-see show. 1. Grand Aniwa, Michinoku Pro, Pin Damien, FMW/AAA at the time, now War/AAA in 636 with the Hurricane Rana. Damien, who wrestles as Ultraman in Tijuana, did imitations of Choshu, Lariat and Scorpion Tenryu, chops in the corner, Megumi Kudo, flying butt bump, and Jinsei Hakushi Shinzaki, rope walk, along with a tope early. This was a very entertaining opener. Naniwa did a plancha off the top rope to the floor. Damien came back doing Misawa, rapid forearms and called out Muto, but then missed the moonsault, leaving Naniwa with the opening for the win. 3 stars. 2. Shinjiro Otani, New Japan, made Masaaki Mochizuki, Kiao Dojo, submit in 402 with a heel hold. Mochizuki does a karate gimmick wearing a gi, and from the way he moves, you can see he's well versed in karate. Although Mochizuki is clearly green, Otani is such a super worker that he played to his strengths, and it was a hot short match. In particular, Mochizuki does an incredible leg sweep into a heel hold, and the two traded great slaps and hard kicks. He actually looked really good because of Otani, but then blew up, and Otani finished it with a drop kick to the knee, a springboard drop kick from the apron into the ring onto the knee, and the heel submission. 3¼ stars. 3. Ultimo Dragon, War/EMLL, pinned Shoichi Funaki, PWFG at the time, now Michinoku Pro/Battlerts, in 6:52 with a Frankensteiner off the top rope, a DDT, a moonsault, and finishing with La Magistral or a Dandana. Really good early. There were missed spots in the middle as the two didn't work together perfectly, but the finish was really strong. 3 stars. 4. Gedo, WAR, pinned Masayoshi Motegi, Wrestle Dream Factory, in 6:56 when Motegi went for a Hurricane Rana, but Gedo dropped it into a power bomb, then used a War Special underhook grip full Nelson for the submission. These guys weren't the best in the tournament, but worked very hard and displayed more hot moves than any match thus far. 3¼ stars. 5. Dos Cars, EMLL, pinned El Samurai, New Japan, in 7 minutes with a flying body press. The biggest surprise was the work of Cars. It was like he, for one night, took 10 or more years off his age, but advanced 10 years from now in the evolution of working. In other words, this was the Dos Cars physically of the 80s doing a match from the year 2006. He was awesome on the mat, putting samurai in moves you won't see anywhere else. 3¾ stars. 6. Lionheart or Chris Jericho, War/EMLL, pinned Hanzo Nakajima, Michinoku Pro, in 6:48 with a Fisherman Buster followed by a second rope moonsault. Nakajima also wasn't the caliber of most of the guys here, and it was noticeable. Lionheart is still lacking in some ways as a worker, but is incredible when it comes to displaying athletic maneuvers that pop a crowd. He and his moves carried this to a good match. Highlight was with both men standing on the top rope. Lion did a standing dropkick, knocking Nakajima to the floor, and followed by running across the ring, leaping to the second rope and diving over the top with a Silver King flip dive to the floor. 3 stars. 7. Jushin Liger, New Japan, pinned Naniwa in 9:13 with a Fisherman Buster. Naniwa opened strong with a Frankensteiner off the top, a plancha and a drop kick off the top to the back of Liger's head, and a Dr. Bomb, gut wrench into power bomb, all in the first minute to get the fans into the match because everyone knew Naniwa had no chance of winning. It slowed in the middle. Naniwa is very small, but is only 18 years old, and he's about as good as anyone I've seen at that age except perhaps Rey Mysterio Jr. Naniwa got several near falls in toward the finish before Liger hit an elbow off the top and the winning move. 3¾ stars. 8. Dragon pinned Otani in 13:30. Dragon missed a plancha and Otani hit him with a drop kick off the apron to the floor. Otani hit a springboard plancha to the floor, and then a springboard leg lariat into the ring. Otani went to the top, but Dragon got up to the middle rope and hit him with a drop kick off the middle onto Otani on the top, who took a bump to the floor. Dragon then did his Osai moonsault. This was all before the 2-minute mark. It slowed down for the next few minutes. It picked up again after the two traded 4 tombstone piledrivers, each of which resulted in the other sitting up a la Undertaker, which is strange in this type of match. They went with near falls back and forth, including Dragon using La Magistral and Liger Bomb and Otani using a Dragon suplex. There was superheat at the end. Otani kicked out of a Fisherman suplex, but Dragon used a moonsault into a spin plancha, which was supposed to hit but actually missed, and La Magistral for the pin. 4¼ stars. 9. Gedo pinned Karas in 8:54. Das again displayed great mat holds for the first 5 minutes. Das used a double arm suplex into a backbreaker, a Mexican spinning backbreaker, and his trademark flying body press, all for near falls. Finish saw Das on the top rope punching down to the head when Gedo used a low blow and hit a DDT for the finish. 3¾ stars. 10. Wild Pegasus or Chris Benoit, New Japan/WCW, pinned Lion in 13:43 with a power slam off the middle rope. If Lion can combine his incredible athletic moves with a little more timing of when to do things, he'll really be dangerous. Unlike most of those who do Japanese or Mexican style and let their moves do their talking, he's more animated and has a lot of performance energy. Pegasus is of course an expressionless wrestling machine. With Pegasus on the apron, Lion leapfrogged to the top rope and came off with a drop kick outside the ring, hitting Pegasus. He then did a moonsault off the middle rope, over the top rope, to the floor. Lion kicked out of a dragon suplex for a big pop. After Pegasus missed a headbutt, Lion hit a tiger driver for a near fall. At one point Pegasus, while on the apron with Lion in the ring, gave Lion a back suplex over the top backward to the floor and followed with a crazy tope. A lot of awesome spots at the end. This was a fantastic match, although not as good as Lionheart's Match of the Year candidate with Dragon. 4 1/4 stars. 11. Liger pinned Dragon in 17-19. The match started slow with them mainly working on each other's knees for the first 10 minutes. At that point it picked up and turned into a super match. Dragon did a tope and then followed it with a somersault body block over the post to the floor. The two traded near falls. Liger did a running somersault block off the apron and hit more big moves for near falls. Liger used a tombstone piledriver, which unlike the Otani match, and making absolutely no sense, Dragon sold and laid there while Liger came off the top with a diving headbutt. All kinds of more near falls including Dragon using La Magistral, which Liger kicked out of. Finish saw Dragon go for La Magistral once again, but Liger reversed it into a pin. 4 1/2 stars. 12. Gedo pinned Pegasus in 9-20. One high-impact big move after another, mainly with Pegasus, since he was the one doing the job, dominating the match. Pegasus carried this to an excellent match. Gedo used a brainbuster followed by a headbutt off the top rope for the pin. 4 1/4 stars. 13. Rey Mysterio Jr. pinned Psychosis in 9:39. The only negative about this match was that they rushed to get too many incredible moves into too short of a match. As far as execution of incredible moves, this was just about perfect. Their second Philadelphia match and September Mexico City match were better because they had more time, but for incredible dives and moves and hitting them perfectly, this is as good a match as has ever taken place. The Japanese also gave Mysterio Jr.'s moves names. The first big move was the leap off the middle rope over the turnbuckle to the floor with a flip, Silver King dive, Tope Con Hilo, which was given the name of the Mysteriosa. The move which really got him over was a leap over the post to the floor ending in a Frankensteiner, which is called Paracaidus. Psychosis then did a dive over the top to the floor. Mysterio Jr. came back with a springboard dropkick to the back. He then did a springboard full somersault body block to the floor called the Mysterious Steiner. His springboard Frankensteiner back into the ring is called Ultra Hurricane Rana. His Osai moonsault off the top rope to the floor is called a Super Quebrada. The move where he does a handspring into a victory roll position, then reverses position into a Hurricane Rana is Pinces. His walking the ropes into a Frankensteiner off the top rope is called a Raysteiner, and he followed with a simple Frankensteiner in the ring for the pin. 4 3/4 stars. 14. Liger pinned Gedo in 15:47 after a Fisherman Buster off the top rope. Again it started slow with Liger working on Gedo's arm. Gedo did a moonsault off the middle rope to the floor. Liger went for a plancha off the top to the floor, but Gedo hit him with a dropkick as he came off in a great spot. Another great spot saw Liger throw the unprotected German suplex so high that Gedo actually flipped all the way over and landed on his feet, and when Liger turned around, Gedo used a Frankensteiner. Lots of great near falls at the end. 4 1/4 stars. Major Events Wrestling Calendar February 2nd to March 2nd. February 2nd CWA Pay-Per-View taped January 5th in Dallas, Vegas and Devin Michaels and Mark Valiant and Putski and Cox and Minaldi vs. Chip and Price and Hawk and Summers and Porto and Falcone February 3rd New Japan Sapporo Nakajima Sports Center, Liger vs. Black Tiger February 3rd ECW Queens New York Lost Battalion Hall, Sandman and Scorpio vs. Gangstas February 4th New Japan Sapporo Nakajima Sports Center, Muto and Sasaki vs. Yamazaki and Kido February 5th WCW Monday Nitro taping Lakeland, Florida Civic Center, Savage vs. Pillman February 11th WCW Super Brawl Pay-Per-View St. Petersburg Bayfront Center, Hogan vs. Giant February 12th WCW Monday Nitro taping Tampa Fairgrounds, Hogan vs. Shark February 16th UFC Pay-Per-View by Amon, PR Ruben Rodriguez Arena, Ken Shamrock vs. Chemo February 17th ECW Philadelphia ECW Arena, Raven vs. Sandman February 18th WWF In Your House Pay-Per-View Louisville Gardens, Bret Hart vs. Diesel February 18th WCW Baltimore Arena, Flair vs. Sting February 19th WWF Monday Night Raw taping Cincinnati Gardens. February 19, WCW Monday Nitro taping Salisbury, MDY Comico Civic Center. February 20, WWF Superstars tapings Huntington, West Virginia. February 24, WWF East Rutherford, New Jersey Meadowlands Arena. February 25, WWF Pittsburgh Civic Arena. February 25, New Japan Tokyo Sumo Hall, Muto and Liger vs. Takada and Sano. February 26, WCW Monday Nitro tapings Cleveland State University Convocation Center. March 1, New Japan UWFI Tokyo Budokan Hall, Takada vs. Koshinaka. March 2, All Japan Tokyo Budokan Hall. March 2, Pancrase Kobe, Frank Shamrock vs. Rutan results. January 13, Tillicum, Washington, Indiana, Richie Magnette v. Big Red Wrecking Crew. Buddy Rose v. Inferno, Moondog Moretti v. Nick Allen. Moretti won triangle match over Rose and Magnette. Sumito and Dave Dobashi v. Buddy Wayne and Randy Taylor. January 18, Winnipeg, River City Wrestling, Caveman Broda and Chad Ripley v. Vance Nevada and Bobby Collins. Bugsy Slugliano v. Steve Stryker. Robbie Hoist v. Jeff Donovan. Easy Rider v. Nevada DQ. Brother Midnight v. Brian Jewell. January 19, Cudahy, California, AIWA, Ken Man v. Sammy Delgado. Peter Maivia Jr. v. Antonio Rocca. Wonder where they got that name from? Jack Studd v. Mark Kissel, Alex Knight and Bubba Storm and Dan Fabiano v. Steven De Leon, and Spike Cantillo and Leo Pardo Negro. January 20, Hannibal, Missouri, Central States Wrestling Association, 278 Sellout, Pretty Boy Floyd v. Disco Joe, J.W. Thunder v. Centurion, Beast v. Steve Steele, Marcus Mansfield and Blake Mansfield v. Rick Diamond and Matt Taylor, Lunatic Max v. Mark Stone, Thunder 1 Battle Royal. January 20, Maywood, California, AIWA, Country Boy Calhoun v. Violator, Ken Manter Dan Fabiano, Bubba Storm v. Spike Cantillo, Mark Kissel v. Jack Studd Core. January 22, White Georgia, Power Slam Wrestling, Crypt Keeper v. Demon of Destruction, Big Huff v. Cody Gunn, Ken Arden v. Bubba Humphries, Lord Humongous, SMW Punisher, v. John Arden, Chris Walker v. Tim Dyer. January 23, Mexico City Arena Coliseo, EMLL, Olympus and Ultraman Jr. and Scorpio v. America and Fierro and Feliz. Cyclone Ramirez and Americo Rocca and Yoshihiro Tajiri v. Moger and Halcon Negro Jr. and Guerrero de la Muerte, Felino and Archangel and Mano Negra v. Pantera and Brazo de Oro and Mascara Magica, Dandy and Silver King and Brazo de Plata v. Gran Marcus Jr. and El Satanico and Dr. Wagner Jr. DQ. January 23, Asheville, North Carolina, IPW 40, Dave Jericho v. Steve Skyfire, Headbangers v. Stan Lee and Eddie Golden, Joey Maggs v. David Young, Terry Gordy v. Billy Black, Ricky Morton v. Brad Armstrong, Gangsta's DDQ Punisher and Rick Savage. January 24, Tokyo Budokan Hall, Rings, 12,683, Ruamiya v. Wataru Sakata, Heinzman v. Willie Peters, Gregory Kurmenchev v. Bakuli, Mitsuya Nagai v. Tony Halme, Ludwig Borga, Tsuyoshi Kosaka v. Maury Smith, Bitsays Terriel v. Rarfin, Hans Nyman v. Folk Han, Battle Dimension 95 Tournament Championship, Akira Maeda v. Yoshihise Yamamoto. January 24, White Plains, New York, WWF 3000 Savio Vega v. Bob Backlund, Fatu v. Isaac Yankem, Tatanka v. Bob Holly, WWF Tag Titles, Smoking Guns v. Bodidonas, Hunter Hearst Helmsley v. Duke Drosy, WWF Title, Bret Hart v. Goldust, Ahmed Johnson v. Jeff Jarrett, Ringmaster v. Hakushi, Undertaker and Diesel v. Yokozuna and Owen Hardcore. January 24, Memphis, USWA, 410, Spellbinder and Tony Williams v. Border Patrol, USWA Women's Title, Miss Texas v. Susan Sapphire, Randy Hales v. Brandon Baxter, Brian Christopher v. Jesse James Armstrong, USWA Tag Titles, PG-13 v. Doug Gilbert and Tracy Smothers DQ, 30-minute Most Falls match, PG-13 and Christopher and Kamala v. Gilbert and Robert Gibson and Smothers and Armstrong 17-16. January 24, Nagano War, 1,500 Michiko Omukai and Carol Midori v. Keiko Aono and Mizuki Endo, Osamu Te Toko v. Lion Heart, Yuji Yasurioka and Ultimo Dragon v. Battle Ranger and Lance Storm 2019, Arashi and Koki Kitahara v. Masaaki Mochizuki and Takashi Okamura, Shinichi Nakano v. Nobutaka Araya, Geto and Jado and Hiramichi Fuyuki v. Abutadine and Great Shinja and Big Titan. January 24, Omuda, Tokyo Pro Wrestling, 650, Bloody Bruise A and BB Shun Matsuzaki and Apollo Sugawara, Gekko B. Hiroshi Hatanaka, Daiko Kubo Benkei and Great Kabuki B. Kishin Kawabata and Shigeo Okamura, Masashi Aoyagi B. Tenakabof K, Mr. Pogo and Toryu beat Takashi Ishikawa and Rikio Ito. January 25, Baltimore Arena WWF, 5,900. Ringmaster B. Henry Godwin, Duke Droese and Fatu and Bob Holly B. Bob Backlund and Isaac Yankem and Tatanka. Owen Hart B. Hakushi. Ahmed Johnson B. Jeff Jarrett. WWF Tag Titles. Smoking Guns B. Badidanas. IC Title Savio Vega B. Goldust Core. Shawn Michaels B. Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Undertaker B. Yokozuna. Cage match for WWF title. Bret Hart B. Diesel. January 25, Joetsu War 1,500. Mizuki Endo and Carol Midori B. Keiko Aono and Michiko Omukai. Osamu Teitoko B. Abuda Dine. Ultimo Dragon and Yujiyasu Ryoka B. Lance Storm and Lionheart. Nobutaka Araya and Arashi B. Takashi Okamura and Masaaki Mochizuki. Shinichi Nakano B. Koki Kitahara. Gedo and Jado and Hiromichi Fuyuki B. Big Titan and Great Shinja and Battle Ranger. January 25, Nagasaki Tokyo Pro Wrestling. 380 Tenakabof KB Shun Matsuzaki. Rikio Ir D. Apollo Sugawara. Bloody Bruise A and BB Kishin Kawabata and Akihiko Masuda. Gecko B. Shigeo Okamura. Tagokubo Benkei and Great Kabuki B. Mr. Pogo and Toryu DQ. Hiroshi Hatanaka and Takashi Ishikawa B. Segunda No. 1 and Masashi Aoyagi. January 25, Kumamoto, Social Pro Wrestling Federation. Ichiro Yaguchi B. Masanobu Kochi. Bruiser Okamoto B. Crusher Takahashi. Kruger B. Condor. Yuichi Taniguchi B. Keizo Matsuda. Seiji Yamakawa and Kendo Nagasaki B. Murderer and Shoji Nakamaki. Yoshiaki Yatsu and Osamu Teranishi B. Action Jackson and Jason Knight. January 25, Port Alberni, BC, Extreme Canadian Championship Wrestling. 175. Bart Sawyer B. Loverboy Johnny. Johnny Canuck, Bodyguard B. NATO Peacekeeper. Ole Olsen B. Crybaby Huey, Sawyer and Olsen B. Loverboy Johnny and Michelle Starr. January 25, Shelbyville, Tennessee. Allstate Wrestling, 256. Jason Vaughn D. Lynchburg Kid. Medic B. Steve Neely. Strictly Business B. Ashley Hudson and Ben Mullins. Robbie Rage B. Regina Hale. Tracy Smothers B. Gypsy Joe. Chris Kearns B. Nightmare. January 25, Bakersfield, California. Slammers. Jimmy James and Samoan Kid B. Dynamite D. and Tyrone Little. Buddy West B. Little. Bruce Bodine B. Hombre de Oro. Vern Langdon B. El Toro Bravo. Jeff Lindbergh B. Movie Star Mike. January 26, New York Madison Square Garden. WWF. 15,000 12,800 paid Tatanka and Isaac Yankem B. Bob Holly and Fatu 2 stars. Duke Droese B. 123 Kid Dud. Owen Hart B. Hakushi 1/2 of 1 star. Ahmed Johnson B. Jeff Jarrett 2.5 stars. Ringmaster B. Henry Godwin Dud. Undertaker B. Yokozuna 3.5 stars. WWF Tag Titles. Smoking Guns B. Badidanas 1.5 star. IC Title Savio Vega B. Goldust Core 1.5 star. Shawn Michaels B. Hunter Hearst Helmsley 3 stars. Cage match for WWF title. Bret Hart B. Diesel 2 stars. January 26, Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, ECW. 666. Taz B. Hack Myers 1.25 stars. Judge Dredd B. Blue Meanie 1/2 of 1 star. Axel Rotten B. JT Smith 2.5 stars. Headhunters B. Bad Crew 1.75 stars. Shane Douglas B. Stevie Richards 2.5 stars. Pit Bulls and Tommy Dreamer B. 2 Cold Scorpio and Eliminators 4 stars. Sabu B. Jimmy Del Rey 2.75 stars. ECW Tag Titles. Cactus Jack and Mikey Whipwreck B. Ba Ray Dudley and Dances with Dudley 2.5 stars. ECW Title. Sandman B. Mr. Hughes 1.25 stars. January 26 Kawasaki, All Japan, 2,800 Manukia Mossman and Rex King B. Kentaro Shiga and Masao Inoue. Takao Mori B. Satoru Asako. Giant Baba and Rusher Kimura and Mitsuo Momoto B. Mighty Inoue and Haruka Eigen and Joel Deaton. Ryukaku Izumida and Tamon Honda B. Tsuyoshi Kikuchi and Yoshinari Ogawa. Gary Albright B. Eagle, Lacrosse and Patriot and Eagle B. Steve Dahl and Bobby Duncombe Jr. and Stan Hansen, Miwaru Misawa and Kenta Kobashi and Jun Akiyama B. Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao and Masa Fuchi. January 26 Nessa Walcoyotl, AAA, 3,000 sellout. Prelim results unavailable. Ferrero and Supercolo and Principe Zafiro and Tornado and winners B. Mr. Condor and Marabunta and Gallego and Bronco and Rocky Santana. Rey Mysterio Jr. and Gran Hamada and Latin Lover B. Psychosis and Vegas and Pentagon. Iwa's HWT title, Hanan B. Pieroth Jr. to become first champion. January 26, Dallas Sportatorium, CWA, 700/heavily papered. Mike and Buster Blackheart B. Sam Houston and Al Jackson Core. Bill Irwin B. Tim Brooks, Chris Adams B. Chip the Firebreaker, Ryuma Gobi Alex Porto. Devin Michaels and Bo Vegas B. John Hawk and Rod Price DQ. January 26, Cure Tokyo Pro Wrestling, Bloody Bruise A and Bibiaki Iko Masuda and Hiroshi Hatanaka, Apollo Sugawara B. Shigeo Okamura Tenaka both KB Segunda No. 1, Great Kabuki and Daiko Kubo Benkei B. Shun Matsuzaki and Gecko, Masashi Aoyagi B. Rikyo Ito, Kishin Kawabata and Takashi Ishikawa B. Toryu and Mr. Pogo. January 26, Niage, Social Pro Wrestling Federation, Masanobu Kochi B. Crusher Takahashi, Seiji Yamakawa B. Yuichi Taniguchi, Kruger B. Condor, Bruiser Okamoto B. Keizo Matsuda, Samu Teranishi B. Murderer DQ, Kendo Nagasaki B. Jason Knight, Yoshiaki Yatsu and Teranishi and Shoji Nakamaki B. Action Jackson and Ichiro Yaguchi and Murderer. January 26, Lincoln Park, New Jersey, ESA, 240, Metal Maniac B. Gino Caruso, King Kala B. Johnny Gunn, Tommy Cairo Damian Stone, Jim Powers B. Skull Von Crush, Devon Storm B. Inferno Kid, Ace Darling B. Johnny Handsome, Jimmy Snuka B. Mike Sharp. January 26, Campbell River, BC, Extreme Canadian Championship Wrestling, 140 Sellout, Bart Sawyer B. Loverboy Johnny DQ, Bodyguard B. NATO Peacekeeper, Ole Olsen B. Crybaby Huey, Sawyer and Olsen B. Loverboy Johnny and Michelle Starr. January 26, Inman, South Carolina, Pro Wrestling Federation, 77, Sweet Brown Sugar B. Russian Assassin, Baby Huey B. Assassin, George South and Equalizer B. Italian Stallion and Sugar, Terry Austin B. Chris Hamrick, Hamrick 1 Battle Royal. January 26, Rossville, Georgia, TWA, Scott James B. Risk Taylor DQ, Chuck Colton Michael Collins and Johnny Blaze B. Joel Travis and Mr. Payne and New One Man Gang, Ken Arden and Sam Colton Keith Hart B. Jimmy Sharp and Roger Sartain and Rick Justice. January 27, Philadelphia ECW Arena, ECW 1006 Sellout, Hack Myers B. Mr. Hughes 1 star, Judge Dredd B. Blue Meanie, Brian Rollins 1 star, Bubba Ray Dudley and Dances with Dudley B. JT Smith and Axel Rotten Dud, Headhunters B. Bad Crew 2 stars, ECW TV title 2 Cold Scorpio BL Puerto Rican 1 1/2 star, Gangstas B. Pit Bulls 2 stars, Sabu B. Rob Van Dam DQ 4 stars, ECW Tag titles, Cactus Jack and Mikey Whipwreck B. Shane Douglas and Tommy Dreamer 2 stars, ECW title, Raven B. Sandman to win title 3 stars. January 27, State College, Pennsylvania, WWF, 7860, Owen Hart B. Hakushi, Ahmed Johnson B. Jeff Jarrett, Ringmaster B. Henry Godwin, IC title Savio Vega B. Goldust Corps, Tatanka and Isaac Yankem B. Fatu and Bob Holly, cage match for WWF title, Bret Hart B. Diesel, WWF tag titles, Smoking Guns B. Badidanas, Shawn Michaels B. Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Undertaker B. Yokozuna. January 27, Tokyo Korakuen Hall, All Japan, 2100 Sellout, Ryukaku Izumida B. Kentaro Shiga, Tsuyoshi Kikuchi and Yoshinari Ogawa B. Monokia Mossman and Masao Inoue, Tamon Honda B. Satoru Asako, Mitsuo Momota and Rusher Kimura B. Haruka Eigen and Mighty Inoue, Johnny Ace and Bobby Duncombe Jr. and Joel Deaton B. Gary Albright and Rex King and Steve Dahl, All Asian Tag Title, Jun Akiyama and Takao Mori B. The Lacrosse and the Eagle 2057. Stan Hansen B. The Patriot, Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi and Giant Baba B. Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao and Masa Fuchi 2724. January 27th, Yardville, New Jersey, NWA 375, Cousin Luke and Johnny Gunn and Harley Lewis and Psychotron B. Hell Riders and Rockin' Rebel and Glenn Osborne, Johnny Handsome B. Inferno Kid, Ace Darling B. Abuda Singh DQ Akita Chaos B. Bobby Blake, NWA title, Dan Severn B. Ghetto Blaster, HW Star B. Cool Kid Ice, Devon Storm B. Rick Ratchet, Bad Attitude B. Lost Boys. Ladder match, Tommy Cairo B. Derek Domino 3 3/4 stars. January 27th, Cloverdale, BC, Pro Wrestling Canada, 400, Buddy Wayne B. Dylan Powers, Trash Man B. Cobra, Michelle Starr and Slam B. Mike Roselli and Randy Tyler, Rocky Delacerda Bad News Allen, Great Gamma B. Timothy Flowers, Basher B. Sumito DQ. January 27th, Chattanooga, ABWF, 168, Jimmy Sharp B. Alex Davis DQ, Glamour Boy B. Larry Santo, Billy Montana and Ken Arden B. CM Quick and Sharp, Black Terminator B. Lord Humongous, Patriot, Not Del Wilkes, B. Dirty White Boy DQ. January 27th, Brighton, Tennessee, American Wrestling Association, 308, Blade Boudreaux B. Jason Meyer, Brian Collins Drew Chris Gray, Bad News and Blackjack Daniels D. Rebel Connection, Kevin Christian, Kevin Lawler B. Derek King, Justin Williams B. Danny B. Good, Tim White NC Bullpain, Lord Humongous, Gary Nation, and Moondog Spot B. Brad and Len Dustin. January 27, Ito WAR. Prelim results unavailable. Battle Ranger and Big Titan and Great Shinjabi Yuji Yasu Ryoka and Osamu Teitoko and Koki Kitahara Arashibi Shinichi Nakano. Geto and Jado and Hiramichi Fuyukibi Ultimo Dragon and Nobutaka Araya and Genichiro Tenryu 2611. January 28, Philadelphia Core State Spectrum WWF 5312. Duke Drosy and Bob Hollyby Tatanka and Isaac Yankem. Ringmaster B. Henry Godwin. Owen Hart B. Hakushi, Undertaker B. Yokozuna, IC title, Buldust B. Savio Vega. Ahmed Johnson B. Jeff Jarrett Core. WWF Tag Titles, Smoking Guns B. Body Donis, Shawn Michaels B. Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Cage Match for WWF title, Bret Hart B. Diesel. January 28, Tokyo Korakuen Hall, All Japan, 2100 Sellout, Rex King and Steve Dalby Bobby Duncombe Jr. and Joel Deaton, The Lacrosse B. Tsuyoshi Kikuchi, Masafuchi and Haruka Eigen and Mighty Inoue B. Mitsuo Momoda and Rusher Kimura and Giant Baba Monukiya Mossman and Kentaro Shiga and Kena Kobashi B. Raikaku Izumida and Satoru Asako and Masao Inoue 2249. Asunaro Cup Championship Match, Tamon Honda B. Takao Mori, Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao and Yoshinari Ogawa B. The Eagle and Johnny Ace and the Patriot. Gary Albright and Stan Hansen B. Mitsuharu Misawa and Jun Akiyama. January 28, Tokyo Pro Wrestling, Kishin Kawabata B. Rikyo Ito, Toryu B. Shun Matsuzaki, Hiroshi Hatanaka and Apollo Sugawara B. Masashi Aoyagi and Segundon No. 1, Bloody Bruise, ANBB Gecko and Akihiko Masuda, Mr. Pogo B. Tenakabof K, Great Kabuki and Daiko Kubo Benkei B. Shigeo Okamura and Takashi Ishikawa. January 28, Nagoya, Gia Japan, Toshie Uematsu B. Toshie Sato, Nakano B. Aki Kanbayashi, Chikeo Nagashima B. Meiki Numao, Yuki Nabano and Kaorubi Megumi Kudo and Bomber Hikari, Chigusa Nagio and Sanoka Kato and Mako Satomura B. Kaori Nakayama and Yukari Ishikura and Combat Toyota. January 28, Kodama, Wrestle Dream Factory, 125. Madness B. Wolfs, Zerbi Azteca, Hiroyoshi Katsubo B. Hirofumi Miura, Onryo B. Shinichi Shino, Masayoshi Motegi B. Shinigami, Kamikaze and Shinichi Nakano B. Osamu Teitoko and Arashi. January 29, Canton, Ohio, WWF Monday Nitro Tapings 3500 Sellout, Brian Pillman B. Renegade US title, Conan B. One Man Gang to win title, WCW TV title, Johnny B. Bad B. Diamond Dallas Page, Ric Flair B. Hulk Hogan 1 1/4 stars, Road Warriors B. Barbarian and Meng 1 1/4 stars, Sister Sherry B. Medusa 1 star, WCW title, The Giant B. Randy Savage DQ 1/4 star. Special thanks to Greg Greenland, Greg John, Greg Davidson, Mike Rogers, Mark Morton, Etta Hearns, Wayne Stanton, Georgianne Makropoulos, Sarah Moore, Mike Omansky, Boris Smirno, Dan Paris, Alan Berry, Bart Orkline, Chuck Longerman, David Milliken, Dominic Valenti, Brian Collins, Stuart Kemp, Ken McBride, Peggy Watkins, Steve Grosso, Lonnie Whitworth, Jesse Money, Dan Moreland. Japanese Television Rundown. January 13, New Japan. 1. Shinjiro Otani and Yuji Nagata and Tokumitsu Ishizawa beat Kenichi Yamamoto and Hiromitsu Kanehara and Kazushi Sakuraba in a New Japan vs UWFI match when Nagata made Yamamoto submit to the cross arm breaker in 10:15. The match was good for what it was since the style, UWFI style, had a high believability factor and thus the match had good heat because that's what the people came to see. 2 1/4 stars. 2. Shinya Hashimoto pinned Kazuo Yamazaki with a brainbuster in 9:18. Hashimoto doesn't work well in this style. His kicks were great but overall the match wasn't much. 1 1/2 star. January 21, All Japan Women. 1. Ri Tamada and Yumi Fukawa beat Nobu Endo and Kumiko Maekawa in a Japanese tag team title match when Tamada pinned Maekawa with a Hurricane Rana in 17:05. All action but not much crowd heat. 1 1/2 star. 2. Saki Hasegawa pinned Tomoko Watanabe in 17:59 with a Hurricane Rana. There were some great moves, but overall considering who was involved this was a disappointment. It got good at the end with the near falls. 2 3/4 stars. 3. Asia Kong and Mima Shimoda beat Yumiko Hata and Itsuko Mita in 17:07 when Kong pinned Mita with a Huracan backhand punch. Good in spots and nice near falls at the end but also not up to what you'd expect. 3 stars. 4. Kyoko Inoue and Takako Inoue beat Manami Toyota and Kaoru Ito in 1931 when Kyoko pinned Ito after Takako choke slammed her off the top rope. Toyota was awesome. Also started slow but turned into a great match by the end. 3 3/4 stars. EMLL Hijo del Santo beat Blue Panther on January 26 in Tijuana to win the Mexican middleweight championship. The show drew 2,800 fans, which is more than double the crowd that AAA drew with Octagon and Rey Mysterio Jr. versus Pentagon and KGB on top 3 days earlier, although less than AAA drew for its show 8 days earlier. Vampiro Canadiense has apparently quit this promotion to concentrate on getting a rock career going. He's going to continue to work for ProMel. On the January 26 Arena Coliseo show, Negro Casas finally scored a win over Shocker when his NWA welterweight title was at stake, winning the third fall clean with a crucifix. The semifinal on the show saw Dos Carson Atlantis and Hector Garza beat Bestia Salvaje and Dr. Wagner Jr. and Emilio Charles Jr. via DQ in a match where Garza juiced heavily. February 2nd at Arena Coliseo has a double main with Atlantis and Garza and Dos Caras versus Wagner and Charles and Salvaje with no ref and Santo and Silver King and Dandy versus Negro Casas and Apollo Dantes and Satanico. AAA. The biggest show of the week was January 26th in Nezahualcóyotl, which drew the fourth straight weekly sellout in the 3,000-seat arena. The headline match was to determine the first IWAS heavyweight champion, with Conan beating Pierre Roth Jr. Conan took the first fall via submission. In the second fall, Mini Espectrito interfered and began attacking Conan, bringing in Torito, another Mini. Finally, heel ref Tirantes kicked Espectrito out from ringside. At this point, Psicosis came out to work Pierre Roth's corner. Conan used a figure 4 and Pierre Roth sold it huge. Instead of submitting, Tirantes stopped the match like you would in boxing to check on Pierre Roth's leg. Pierre Roth indicated he wanted to forfeit the match, but Conan then indicated he wanted it to be ruled no contest because he didn't want to win the title via injury. Pierre Roth tried to hand Conan the belt and raise his arm, but when Conan finally raised his arm, Pierre Roth suckered him and Tirantes counted the pin. In the third fall, Psicosis kept interfering and Torito tried to stop him. It wound up with Pierre Roth giving the Mini a DDT and Rey Mysterio Jr. came out and carried the Mini out and then came back. At this point, Espectrito came back as well and interfered, but Conan gave him a DDT. Mr. Condor then did a run-in and Super Colo ran out to make the save. Sound enough like ECW yet? Finish saw Pierre Roth go for a pin with the ref distracted, but Conan hit the mat 3 times and Pierre Roth got up and Conan schoolboyed him for the pin. Gran Hamada, who is expected to be retiring very shortly, he even cancelled his New Japan tour that was supposed to begin this week, made his AAA debut in the semi-teaming with Mysterio Jr. and Latin Lover to beat Pentagon and Psicosis, and the debut of the New Vegas, former UWA wrestler Black Power. Power and Hamada were apparently out of their league here, but it was a very good match. Mysterio Jr.'s latest invention was coming off the rope with a full forward roll into a Frankensteiner on Psicosis, although the execution of the move wasn't perfect. The finish of the third fall saw Psicosis go for the die-hard, Splash Mountain off the top rope, but in midair, Mysterio Jr. reversed the move into a Frankensteiner. The other key match had Torero and Colo and Principe Zafiro, formerly Aguila de Acero and Tornado, and winners over Mr. Condor and Marabunta and Gallego and Bronco and Rocky Santana. After the match, all the heels jumped Condor once again, although Condor is still a heel as he did a heel run-in during the main event. The reason Angel Mortal is out of action was because he was involved in an out-of-the-ring fight over Christmas and was shot. EMLL drew just 250 fans 2 days later in the same arena. Both groups are coming back this week, with AAA doing a non-TV show, since they are doing a TV taping in Querétaro that night, with Octagon and Tinieblas Jr. and Cien Caras versus Pentagon and Cibernetico and Pierre Roth Jr., and EMLL having Atlantis and Lismark and Connect versus Wagner and Satanico and Espectro. Connect is still involved in endless negotiations to come in. The same stalling point remains. In order to come in with a push, he has to agree to drop his UWA heavyweight title to an AAA wrestler. Black Panther, the original Vegas, who is the nephew of Blue Panther and is a great worker, is headed back, which shows how ProMel must be doing when the son of its owner, Juventud Guerrera, and the nephew of its other owner have both quit. Biggest show of this week is January 31st in Aguascalientes, headlined by Mysterio Jr. versus Juventud Guerrera in a car versus car cage match, and a match to create the first IWAS Junior Heavyweight Champion between Octagon versus Damien, along with Conan and La Parca, and Clo versus Cibernetico and Psicosis and Pentagon. It'll be Conan's first appearance in that city in more than a year, as he was banned from the city after a brawl with a fan. February 2nd in Querétaro will create the first AAA World Heavyweight Champion with Conan versus Killer. Pierroth Jr. beat Parka on January 20th in Mexicali to win the Mexican light heavyweight title, so Pierroth now holds the Mexican title in both the light heavyweight and heavyweight division. There was a genuine riot after Pierroth won the title and also after Damian beat local favorite Cholo Garcia in a hair match. The fans were destroying Damian with throwing chairs at him, and not in the way they do in ECW. Psychosis went into the crowd with a barbed wire baseball bat and was about to begin swinging, but Conan, who has had his own legal problems from retaliating when fans get out of hand, managed to stop him or he'd probably be in jail. Because of that, they were going to have Pentagon screw Octagon in the singles main event as well, and the result was changed to Octagon going over clean. The return to Tijuana on January 23rd, which was 5 days after the previous show, drew just 1,300. Rey Mysterio was running a show 3 days later with Santo Vampiro and Fuerza Guerrera, which would make 4 major house shows in the same arena in a 2-week period, which doesn't fly when the economy is in the shape it is. The next Tijuana is tentatively scheduled for February 16th with Parka and Mysterio Jr. and Ultraman vs. Psychosis and Pierroth Jr. and Juventud Guerrera in a cage match, Conan and Octagon and Leon Negro vs. Halloween and Cibernetico and Pentagon, and Pandilleros vs. KGB and Pero Russo, a Russian doing the Pero Aguayo gimmick, and Black Poison. There is a match on February 3rd in Mexico City to create AAA World Trios champions with Latin Lover and winners and Heavy Metal, the Sexy Boys, vs. Villanos. Destructors return on that same show facing Tinieblas Jr. and Mascara Sagrada and Frisbee. All Japan. The current tour ended with shows on January 27th and January 28th at Korakuen Hall. In the major matches, Hamon Honda captured the Yasunaro Cup Championship, which is the annual tournament of the younger wrestlers, by pinning Takao Omori in the finals on January 28th. This puts Honda into the Champion Carnival tournament in March and April, where no doubt he'll lose just about every match. Omori and Jun Akiyama retained their All-Asian Tag titles on the January 27th show, beating the Lacrosse, Jungle Jim Steele and the Eagle, Jackie Fulton, when Akiyama pinned Eagle. The 2 main events respectively saw Giant Baba and Kenta Kobashi and Mitsuharu Misawa over Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao and Masa Fuchi in 27-24 when Kobashi pinned Fuchi, and Stan Hansen and Gary Albright over Misawa and Akiyama when Albright pinned Akiyama with the Dragon Suplex in 12:30. Probably the biggest result of the past week was in the main event on January 26th in Kawasaki, where Misawa and Kobashi and Akiyama beat Tao and Kawada and Fuchi, with Akiyama scoring the winning pin on Tao with a front suplex. It was Akiyama's first pinfall over one of the big 4: Tao, Kawada, Misawa, Kobashi. After the January 28th Korakuen Hall show, Baba announced that because of Akiyama's win in Kawasaki, the Big 4 is now the Big 5, and that Akiyama would be challenging for the tag title with either Misawa or Kobashi as a partner against Albright and Hansen in February or March. He also announced that Akiyama would become Steve Williams' regular tag team partner when Williams returns. Also on January 26th, Honda and Ryukaku Izumida upset Tsuyoshi Kikuchi and Yoshinari Ogawa to earn the next shot at the All-Asian Tag Belts. January 21st television show did a 2.7 rating. New Japan. With Grand Hamada cancelling the tour, Jushin Liger title defense on February 3rd in Sapporo will be against Black Tiger, Eddie Guerrero. The February 4th Sapporo show will have El Samurai defend the UWA light heavyweight belt against Dean Malenko, plus a main event announced of Keiji Muto and Kensuke Sasaki vs. Kazuo Yamazaki and Osamu Kido. January 13th television show did a 2.1 rating and January 20th did a 2.3. Other Japan notes. Rings ran its traditional biggest show of the year on January 24th at Budokan Hall before 12,683 in the Battle Dimension 95 tournament finals, with Akira Maeda, on his 37th birthday, beating Yoshihisa Yamamoto in 1759 with a heel hook. Maeda will have yet another knee operation in March. Maeda will be going to the Hans Niemann show in Amsterdam on February 18th, which is a shoot fighting tournament with Serve as referee. Niemann beat Volkan via technical knockout in 6:49 in the match to determine the number 3 ranking in rings. Yoji Anjo lost face in a sense on January 27th in Yokohama as part of a shootboxing show. Rules allow for boxing, kicking and Greco-Roman throws, but not mat work or submissions, which in theory would be where Anjo would be strong, and the claim is Anjo didn't understand that wasn't allowed when he agreed to do it. Anjo faced American kickboxer Manson Gibson, who I believe was at the UFC in Casper, Wyoming, in an alternates match, losing to Joel Sutton, although it may not be the same person, as the guy in Casper was named He-Man Gibson. The match went to a boring 20-minute draw. Rules of the match didn't allow for judges' decisions, and the newspaper reports were that Anjo mainly backed off and seemed reluctant to get in a position where they would slug it out. Akio Sato, Great Shinja, has left War for IWA, where he'll replace Victor Quiñones as the booker. Quiñones is saying he'll have a major announcement regarding his role in Japan in April, but while in Las Vegas, met with Kevin Sullivan and with Titan Sports about whatever those plans are. Weekly Pro Wrestling came out with its readership awards. Don't have a complete rundown at press time, but Keiji Muto was Wrestler of the Year, Hiroyoshi Tenzan was Rising Star of the Year, Muto vs Nobuhiko Takada on October 9th at the Dome was Match of the Year, beat Suharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi vs Akira Tao and Toshiaki Kawada on June 9th at Budokan was Tag Match of the Year, Manami Toyota vs Akira Hokuto on September 2nd at Budokan was Women's Match of the Year, and Toyota and Saki Hasegawa vs Kyoko Inoue and Takako Inoue on August 30th in Osaka was Women's Tag Match of the Year, while Gary Albright was named Best Foreign Wrestler. The Toyota vs Kyoko match that won the Observer Awards placed third in Best Women's Singles Match, with the Toyota Kansai title change on December 4th placing second. The same Weekly Pro also ran down the top 10s in the Observer Awards in several categories and emphasized the April 2nd show put on by the magazine as winning card of the year. Traditionally, Weekly Gong carries the Observer Awards, but with the Weekly Pro show winning card of the year, I kind of figured politically that result was going to cost publicity-wise in Gong and probably ensure coverage in Weekly Pro. With the Weekly Pro circulation of 250,000 to 300,000 and expected coverage in at least one Mexican national sports daily, there is easily more exposure for the Observer Awards than any other wrestling awards in the world. USWA, the January 24th show in Memphis, drew just 410 fans and $2,900, which was one of the two worst houses in the modern history of Memphis wrestling. Based on the reports we got, the main event where PG-13 and Brian Christopher and Kamala faced Doug Gilbert and Robert Gibson and Jesse James Armstrong and Tracy Smothers. Most falls in 30 minutes was really hot. The two teams finished regulation tied with 16 falls each, which sounds awfully quick, doing falls in less than a minute each. They went into a sudden death with the faces winning. There were two major no-shows on the card. Tommy Rich missed the show because he was at the NATB convention representing AWF. Coco Ware missed because there was apparently a plane delay coming in from out of town on an indie show. Even though Memphis numbers plummet, and even the move to Wednesday hasn't seemed to help, both Louisville and Nashville are doing very well, with Nashville on January 20th doing 960 fans, which is among its best crowds in a long time. Wolfie D injured his knee on the January 24th show but was expected to be back by late this week. The Border Patrol is already gone, however manager Patricia is still around, managing only Susan Sapphire. The television on January 27th started with Christopher talking about getting a rematch against Jeff Jarrett for the unified title. Jarrett is a face in Memphis. Christopher said that he thought Jarrett and Jesse James Armstrong, Brody, were working together in the previous title match. Jerry Lawler then came out and defended Jarrett and said that he's learned after all the years he's been in wrestling that when you're in a title match or an important match, you have to figure there's a good chance there will be double teaming. Doug Gilbert used a chain to beat Spellbinder, but Lawler told the ref what happened and he reversed the decision. Lawler then did an interview talking about the Eddie Gilbert show in Cherry Hill, New Jersey on February 3rd and showed a clip of Eddie body slamming him through a windshield of a car several years ago. At this point, Gilbert and Rich attacked Lawler. Christopher ran out like he was going to make the save, but just stood there and went to the mic and said something to the effect that with all of Lawler's experience, he should have known enough to be more prepared for double teaming. Scott Bowden said he's been getting love letters from a woman in Mississippi, which at this point appears it'll be Uptown Karen, who is downtown Bruno's wife, who has returned to the area after going back to Scotland for a few months. January 31st in Memphis was Jarrett defending against Christopher, Lawler defending against Gilbert, PG-13 defending against Armstrong and Smothers, Coco Ware vs. Tex Slazenger, Miss Texas vs. Sapphire, Randy Hales vs. Brandon Baxter and Rich vs. Spellbinder. A few USWA wrestlers are expected to appear on the February 17th WWF show in Memphis. ECW Raven beat Sandman to win the ECW title on the January 27th show at the ECW Arena. After a lot of outside interference that didn't lead to a pin, Raven used a DDT on a chair to win the title. One of the spots saw Cactus Jack DDT Sandman, but Woman revived him Undertaker style by pouring a beer down his throat. After the match, Woman acted like she was glad Sandman lost the title and did an angle playing on her leaving since it was her last night. She tried to get Too Cold Scorpio and Sandman to come to WCW in the angle, saying now that Sandman doesn't have the title, he can come to WCW and make more money and not have to bleed anymore or take chair shots anymore and can team with Hulk and Macho Man. Sandman drank a beer and told her to leave. Scorpio came out looking as if he was defending her and she offered Scorpio the chance and Scorpio asked how much money and acted as if he was going to go with her, but then turned her down and carried her out the back door, saying that Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko, when they left, could go out the front door but that she's going out the back door. You have to give Nancy Sullivan credit for professionalism in doing the angle where they basically called her a whore on the way out, but there is a lot of bitterness because she wanted to stay with ECW and work both companies and was mad Heyman finished her off as soon as she went to WCW. Raven had a new valet called Kimona Wainalia. Come on, I wanna lay ya. Missy Hyatt will start getting a major push on the New York show on February 3rd. The fire marshal showed up at the January 27th show, so attendance was held to a reported 1,006 fans, with an estimated 350 turned away at the door. The best match was Sabu over Rob Van Dam via DQ, 4 stars. When there was a lot of outside interference. There were complaints about the finish, which even Paul Heyman admitted didn't work, and about too many run-ins throughout the show. All told, 911 choke slammed 10 different people: Sabu, Mr. Hughes, El Puerto Ricano, JT Smith, both Gangstas, both Eliminators, Stevie Richards and Blue Meanie, during the show, which I guess was a way to get him to agree to do a clean job on a future show, probably the next show with Sabu if that match even takes place. Headhunters debuted, doing an angle where Damian Kane, who is being used at least partially because with Ed Zone having split with ECW in the aftermath of the fire incident, it is Kane's promoter's license they use in Pennsylvania, turned on Bad Crew and went with Headhunters. Hunters got over really big. Sabu suffered a broken finger in his left hand in the match, with Van Dam doing the Arabian facebuster off the top rope, putting a chair under his butt and doing a forward flip splash onto the guy, but not getting his hand out from under the chair before impact and ended up going to the hospital legit. Cactus Jack came out wearing a t-shirt that said WWF and F on the front and future WWF superstar on the back, cutting a promo for several minutes, knocking the fans and saying how these same fans are going to end up cheering him when he does rest holds against Mabel. During his tag title match, he'd bail out whenever Tommy Dreamer and Shane Douglas would start their comeback. Jack and Whipwreck kept the tag titles, beating Dreamer and Douglas when Douglas was pinned. Blue Meanie and Stevie Richards said they were now forming a tag team called the Fabulous Ones and started doing the strut around the ring. I believe the gimmick will be that they will do a geeky imitation of famous tag teams from the past. The January 26th show in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania drew a turnaway 666, which is the record for the building. There were problems with the setup of the ring, so they had something like a 45-minute delay, which in the building they blamed on Bill Alfonso calling the Pennsylvania State Athletic Commission to get the show stopped unless the ring was fixed. Judge Dredd debuted on both weekend shows. Jimmy Del Rey injured his shoulder legit in the Jim Thorpe match against Sabu. Sabu won, and came to Philadelphia being unable to do his scheduled match, claiming he was beaten up by 109 thugs outside a bar in Syracuse, New York. Douglas did anti-WWF promos at both shows, basically saying the Shawn Michaels story was a lie and that it was really one guy who beat him up, and complaining about his legit heat while in WWF with Razor Ramon. Ramon would apparently tell the boys Douglas was a wimp because he was almost always injured during his WWF stay, and said how Ramon wouldn't even take a head scissors. February 16th in Newark, Delaware, as Glasgow High School is Sabu vs. Cactus Jack. Street Fight Falls Count Anywhere title match with Raven vs. Tommy Dreamer. TV title with Scorpio vs. Whipwreck. Sandman vs. Axel Rotten. Headhunters vs. Pitbulls. Taz vs. Hack Myers. Douglas vs. Richards and Eliminators vs. Dudleys. February 17th at ECW Arena has Raven vs. Sandman for the title, Pitbulls and Francine vs. Eliminators and Richards in a 6-person dog collar match, and Douglas vs. Cactus. Jason is gone once again as he chose to take a Japan tour with Social Pro Wrestling Federation, which coincided with the dates this weekend that were supposed to be used to build him into doing the 6-person dog collar match. Richards will take his place in the match. Ted Petty, Rocco Rock, was at the ECW Arena show and everyone saw him there. But don't read anything into it, as he was apparently very happy once he got his first WCW paycheck. Ryumago from Japan was at the ECW Arena. He had worked the previous night at the Dallas Sportatorium for CWA, doing a run-in during the Gangstas vs. Pitbulls match. Fans were chanting "You sold out at woman." There were at least 2 problems over the weekend with fans. In Jim Thorpe, Sandman was working the crowd and a fan spit on him and he reportedly slapped the fan before everything was broken up. They didn't sell beer at the nightclub show and there were chants of "We want beer" throughout the card. At the arena, a fan who was in the wrong place was apparently knocked silly during the Raven Sandman brawl and taken backstage. Here and there. Steve Williams showed up on the January 27th Dallas Sportatorium show doing an interview saying he was going to return to the ring on February 9th. From what I'm told, he didn't look or sound the same and appeared to be in bad shape. I'm assuming he'll work a few weeks in Dallas as a tune-up for his return to All Japan. Sabu no-showed the January 27 NWA show in Yardville, New Jersey, where he was scheduled against Devon Storm. Rick Ratchet ended up subbing. Dennis Corraluzzo claimed Sabu, who was scheduled to work both ECW and NWA the same night, never called him or the arena to let him know he wasn't coming. Sabu supposedly told friends he had called Corraluzzo to say he wasn't coming, but Corraluzzo said that's not true. It appears Sabu has the kind of relationship with Corraluzzo that he believes he can continue to do this type of stuff, but that since Corraluzzo is kind of a mark for a guy with a hardcore name and rep, that no matter what, he'll always take him back, and up to this point he's been right. Sabu is booked on both Corraluzzo's Eddie Gilbert Memorial Show on February 3 in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and the ECW show in Queens the same night as well. The January 27th show, which drew 375, saw Dan Severn's first match billed as pro wrestling. He worked a show a few weeks back in Michigan, but it was billed as shoot fighting, beating Ghetto Blaster. A correction from last week regarding the career of Jerry Orotsky. We don't have confirmation one way or the other on last week's item, but the report of him winning the Southern title from Randy Savage in 1995 should have read 1985. TC Martin is attempting to put together a show on March 2nd in Las Vegas, headlined by Sabu vs. Sandman. A new promotion that started this past week in British Columbia is calling itself Extreme Canadian Championship Wrestling. UFC The 2020 story on UFC is now scheduled for a February 9th air date. UFC officials expect a strong live gate in Bayamon, Puerto Rico, because UFC videos are the second highest rental video in the violence-loving country, and the buy rates in Puerto Rico on pay-per-view have been in the 3 range, or triple the national average. It is expected that both Severn and Shamrock, provided he beats Chemo, will both cancel all pro wrestling dates for about 2 months to go into intensive training for their match in May. Mark Schultz, an Olympic medalist in wrestling who is the younger brother of the David Schultz who was all over the news this past week about having been murdered, had expressed interest in UFC but hasn't responded as of yet to any inquiries by Semaphore Entertainment Group about coming in. Mark Schultz, who is the wrestling coach at Brigham Young University, helped train Tank Abbott for the Ultimate, and has also trained in Jiu-Jitsu with Rickson Gracie. Most I've talked with seem to peg Jose Moreira as the favorite in the next UFC. WCW. Conan won the U.S. title from One Man Gang on January 29 in Canton, Ohio, 3,500 fans, paying $36,000, virtually no paper, sold out several hours in advance, at the Nitro taping in a match scheduled to air on the February 4 main event show. The match went about 5 minutes with Gang attempting to bodyslam Conan, and him holding onto the ropes as Gang pulled, until he lost balance and Conan landed on top for the pin. Conan's shoulder was all taped up as he messed up his shoulder and pec in the match with Pierre Roth Jr. on January 26 in Nezahualcóyotl. It was diagnosed after this match as a slight shoulder separation. The live Nitro was a hot show for angles, even though the wrestling wasn't anything to speak of. Flair pinned Hogan. The Road Warriors returned against a new team called the Faces of Fear. How many times can they reuse that term? Of Barbarian and Meng, with Hawk pinning Barbarian in 9:06 with a clothesline, 1 1/4 stars. The match was really sloppy, but there was a ton of crowd heat for the return of the Road Warriors as a team. Then came an excellent angle where Kevin Sullivan and Hugh Morris were doing an interview. Arnold Anderson and Brian Pillman came out. Anderson's mic work was nothing short of incredible here. Anderson basically said that Pillman hasn't responded to verbal warnings to straighten up or even to being slapped, so he took off his belt and was going to whip him, acting like he was a parent, and then that it was going to hurt him to do it more than it hurt Pillman to take it. As Pillman begged off, Sullivan and Morris jumped Anderson and were beating on him while Pillman didn't help Anderson. Sullivan got Anderson's belt and began whipping Pillman hard with it. In the ring, Anderson turned the tables and DDT'd Morris and made the save for Pillman, which sets up the tag match on February 12. Sherry pinned Medusa in 1:49, 1 star. Sherry was wearing a short black dress and Medusa came from behind off the top rope on her. This wasn't done as a wrestling match but was simply a way to give the audience panty shots of Sherry. After the match, Medusa German suplexed Sherry and beat the hell out of her. There is tremendous heat regarding Sherry and Medusa. Sherry had no idea the German suplex was coming from behind as it wasn't booked in advance. However, Medusa did get approval to do it from someone in power, but Sherry never got the word and was knocked silly. Sherry didn't want to work with Medusa, but her own position has been tenuous since she missed her flight to Japan in November and apparently thought if she refused to do the match she may lose her job. However, she insisted on going over in the match in order to do the match, which explains the result. The main event of Savage defending against Giant went only 28 before Savage was DQ'd for using the belt. Flair ran in and hit Savage with a chair. Flair and Giant destroyed Savage for several minutes before Hogan made the save, hitting everyone with chairs but Flair. Flair did an interview at the podium afterwards that was excellent as far as getting heat. ESPN did 2 features this week that involved WCW. They did a feature on Kevin Green where he said he wishes he got to Flair and indicated he'd be doing a lot more with WCW. The clip aired Clash footage and featured interviews with Hogan and Savage. The Green deal got a ton of national publicity and was a major topic of conversation pre-Super Bowl, since apparently he neglected to tell his coach that he was flying to Vegas to do the skit. Green went to SummerSlam in Pittsburgh and at the show talked with WWF officials about wanting to get involved with them. ESPN's weekly basketball show profiled AC Green, no relation, of the Phoenix Suns, talking with clips of him in the audience at Nitro talking about being a fan of Hogan's and how tactics he's learned from watching wrestling he applies to rebounding. To show just how paranoid everything is, at the show in Canton, the fire alarm went off, probably because of the pyrotechnics, and people immediately thought it was a dirty trick played by Titan. If the reverse were to happen at Titan, the reaction would be the same. On Nitro, Woman and Elizabeth came to the ring with both Hogan and Savage, as did 2 other women who weren't given names, but it was Linda Balia and Linda's sister. They portray Elizabeth as the queen of them all, which no doubt will lead to a feud with Woman. TV ratings for the weekend of January 27 saw WCW win the Monday Night Battle with a 2.8 rating and 4.0 share for the Flair Hogan to the WWF Raw's 2.4 and 3.3 share despite Diesel Smith and Shawn's first TV match against Yokozuna. Other WCW weekend numbers were Saturday Night doing a 2.8, its best figure in probably 1 year, and Pro did a 1.6. There was no main event because it would have gotten annihilated by the Super Bowl, and for some reason, Andy Griffith does great against the Super Bowl. There was talk of bringing in Giant Haystacks, 6'7", 450-ish, from England as a new giant to feed Hogan. Bad idea. The guy has to be in his 50s by now and was immobile 10 years ago. When All Japan brought him in back in 1985, he made Baba look like Eddie Guerrero in comparison. Bobby Heenan was in trouble for a few days over his saying the dreaded F word on live television, but as the week went on, the heat shifted to Brian Pillman. Not sure what the status is of Pillman, as it appears to change by the minute. He has potential to be a Love Machine caliber heel at this rate. Bischoff signed a 3-year deal to continue running WCW at between $350,000 and $500,000 per year. At the NATP convention, at one time or another, Flair, the Giant's attorney, Nasty Boys, Road Warriors and Pillman all came to meet with McMahon. They were basically all social visits, although Flair apparently expressed displeasure with how he was being used. McMahon was said to have acted as if he was totally ill at ease with all the WCW guys in his booth. They are bringing the Triple Tower of Doom out of the mothballs for the main event at WCW Uncensored in Tupelo, Mississippi on March 24, which is the big show after Super Brawl. The Cage is the rage on pay-per-view this year. 13 weeks of pro and worldwide tapings will be February 1st to February 4th and February 6th to February 8th at Universal Studios in Orlando. Jacques Rougeau and Pierre Ouellet, Jean-Pierre Lafitte, will be coming in after Pierre's WWF contract expires on July 7th. The paper itself hasn't been signed, but Jacques released it to the media in Montreal on January 29th. Both men have agreed to 2 years at $150,000 apiece, plus Jacques, who is a great self-promoter, will get 25% of all pay-per-view revenue in the province of Quebec and also be the local promoter for WCW in Montreal, although Jacques' business partners Tony Mull and Cookie Lazarus will probably be called local promoters to avoid the problems of Jacques promoting shows where he always is featured and goes over. WCW is going to attempt to beat WWF into the new 24,000-seat Molson Center this summer, and it's expected the Quebecers, probably under another name, the name they've talked about is French Connection but they are waiting for legal clearance, will win the tag titles at the first Montreal show. Jacques also wants to use some of the young wrestlers he's trained and used in a failed promotional attempt in Quebec a few months back as undercard performers using WCW talent in the Quebec area. Originally the figure going around was $200,000, but Bischoff convinced Jacques to take the lower amount, claiming to him that even Lex Luger is only making $150,000 per year, which is something I'd be dubious of, as one thing Lex is good is handling his career from a business standpoint. Ouellet officially quit the WWF on January 25th and has been out of action since hernia surgery in November. For the weekend of January 14th, the WCW syndication package drew a 6.1 rating on 172 stations. WWF again didn't crack the listings. They have Nitro scheduled for March 18th in Chattanooga and March 25th in Birmingham. March 4th and March 11th aren't confirmed, but one of the two will be in Kansas City. Talk has surfaced again about bringing in Mike Enos and 2 Cold Scorpio. Road Warriors deal allows them to work anywhere they want as indies except WWF. We've heard one report that Flair also get a bonus or a small raise besides being put over to keep him from leaving. The timing of this given the environment is just about perfect for the wrestlers after it being a market where the wrestlers had little leverage for a long time. In both companies, because of the war and fear a key guy will jump, wrestlers have more power to call their shots or complain about doing jobs than in a long time. Latest angle is that Dallas Page is putting up his $13 million to get another shot at the TV title, and that Bad turned it down. Both reactions are, of course, totally believable. David Finlay's debut aired on January 27 WCW Saturday Night, and it was a total heel-looking attack. They ran clips on bumpers of Steve Austin doing jobs claiming WCW is where the big boys play. In the Flair vs. Alex Wright match, Flair came to the ring with the belt, taped January 18th or before he lost it, and he wore it so as not to call attention to the fact he was obviously going to lose it. The camera shots were chest up. However, during the match in several shots, you could see the belt in the corner by Arnold Anderson as they didn't take it to the back. Steve McMichael did a very good interview on the show, and they teased him getting in the ring with Mike Ditka to manage him for his first match. WWF. Business is booming, which you've got to attribute to the return of Shawn Michaels because everything else is basically a constant. Besides the pay-per-view, the live show in Fresno did a sellout, 608,000 plus paid, and $130,000. Stockton for Raw sold out a small, 2,904 arena. San Jose, with no television, although it was promoted great in the market, sold out, 4,500 for Superstars. January 24th in White Plains, New York did 3,000 out of 3,400 capacity and $41,000. January 25th in Baltimore did $5,987,000, which is about double the usual at the arena. January 26th in Madison Square Garden did a whopping 15,000, 12,800 paying $268,000, and it's expected the March 17th show with Shawn and Diesel vs. Bret Hart and Undertaker may be the first non-pay-per-view sellout at MSG in so many years nobody can ever remember the last time. January 27th in State College, Pennsylvania drew 7,860 and January 28th at the Core State Spectrum in Philadelphia on Super Bowl Sunday drew 5,312 paid and $101,240. The Philly figure is nothing special for the market but phenomenal for Super Bowl Sunday. At most of the shows, Michaels beat Hunter Hearst Helmsley. They first do a DQ finish due to Owen Hart interfering, but then Michaels says he didn't come to do a DQ, and they restart the match with him winning with a superkick. He goes crazy all over the building, hugging fans, and getting a huge response and told he's clearly the star of the show right now. The headline matches every night have been Bret Hart vs. Diesel in the cage with the same finish. At MSG, to set up the tag, both Undertaker and Michaels got involved after the match in a four-way before all the rest of the faces pulled them apart to set up the March 17th show. Quality of the show is way up with far more heat than in years and rabid crowds which include people hopping the rail and getting more violent as well. Razor Ramon missed all the house shows this weekend because his son Cody was hospitalized. Besides the Raw numbers, Mania did a strong 1.8 while Action Zone did a 1.5. WWF wrestlers were shocked at their paychecks for the Winnipeg in Your House that came this past week. Guys are used to earning $3,000 to $10,000 for pay-per-view shows, and the range because the numbers fell off so badly was $500 to maybe $900. I believe the working idea for Cactus Jack's ring name is the Mutilator. They showed another clip of him, actually just his non-ear, on Raw this week. Tatanka is telling people he's only in for 3 months and then will quit wrestling to get involved in another business with friends. WWF officials are saying that they never offered Sheik $3,000 nor a chance to go to ringside with Sabu in the Rumble, although the rest of the story is accurate. Davey Boy Smith's assault trial begins this week in Calgary. It was shocking to see WWF use their own performer going to trial as a hotline tease on Raw, which to me is a sign of desperation and needing quick cash. Geez, shouldn't this week's windfall have been enough? Expect Piper as president through WrestleMania. They are expanding their mailing list to send out gimmick mailers by having people send cards to get well gorilla. Bam Bam Bigelow missed the Rumble because he had major surgery on his elbow. It was thought the surgery would be minor and he'd be able to do the show, but they found a lot more damage than they had initially thought. Stan Lane is gone, probably has been for a while, and is now living in Charlotte selling cars and trying to get into the radio business, and saying he doesn't want to have anything to do with pro wrestling. It is expected that Jim Cornette will be moving to Connecticut within a month and become a full-time member of the booking committee. The WWF warehouse at 50 Commerce Drive in Trumbull, CT is having a sale from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on February 10th with all merchandise 50% or more off. WWF is on tour of India this week. On the January 29th Raw, they set up the February 5th double main of Brett vs. Undertaker and Shawn and Diesel vs. Yokozuna and Smith. First, Diesel pinned Smith when Yoko tried to interfere, but it backfired and he leg dropped Smith, who was pinned. Then Shawn pinned Yokozuna with a superkick after Owen Hart's interference backfired. The Yokozuna turn airs next week. Expect the Monday shows in February to be, if anything, even hotter, not just because heat between the groups has escalated, but because it's February sweeps. They've brought back Clarence Mason. Gimmick is that since Monsoon struck Vader first, Vader was acting in self-defense. Vader will be at the next pay-per-view most likely, but not wrestle until Mania. There was more to the incident in Montreal at the last show involving the injured guy on the Canadians who kept making passes at Sonny. At one point Chris Candido and the guy also got into it with the local police pulling them apart. Kevin Conlon, an all-Big Ten lineman, was in Ahmed Johnson's corner for his match at Penn State University against Jeff Jarrett. Some talk that Badidanas will get the tag straps at WrestleMania. Jake Roberts will be brought in to work as much as he wants in a babyface role. The guys under contract who aren't being booked are sent checks of $50 for each house show run and $500 for each pay-per-view show, which amounts to $1,400 to $1,500 per month. With a tour of India from February 1st to February 7th, the next house show in the US won't be until February 16th in Nashville. The Monday night skits are only going to get nastier over the next few weeks. There was a strong implication made in a letter from Jerry McDevitt, WWF attorney, to Eric Bischoff written on January 29th, in response to Bischoff's letter on January 23rd to McMahon threatening legal action over the skits, claiming the skits were a response to WCW's disparaging remarks on Nitro, WCW's trademark and copyright violations, overusing the Renegade character so similar to the WWF's Ultimate Warrior character that they own the likeness to, interference with contracted WCW performers, presumably Luger and possibly Medusa, although in the case of the latter, while everyone has pointed to Medusa as the villain in this situation, she was fired several days before she threw the belt in the garbage. It wasn't the other way around. I'm not defending her actions, but this is a wrestling war and Titan is hardly the babyfaces on that score, and complaints about Mark Madden. They claim they will be going to the FTC to complain about WCW threatening their freedom of speech by threatening legal action on the TED skits, and for unfair trade practices because Turner syndicators have tied moving WCW programming into a purchase package in some cases with CNN News. There was also a strong inference that the Observer note from several weeks back about a drug stack of choice to those who make that choice, which are drugs believed to be undetectable in steroid tests to begin with, and one of which, HGH, there is no reliable test yet for, will be made public on a TED skit over the next few weeks, claiming that Ted is indifferent to the health of his wrestlers. This is turning into a very nasty war, and it's going to get nastier, and everyone should heed the expression that people who live in glass houses aren't wise to be getting into fights using bricks as a weapon. The Reader's Pages. SDU Hart Show. I trained 3 months with the Hart brothers in Calgary. Bruce and Ross did their best to teach me the basics and fundamentals and applauded me with my effort and dedication as well as knowledge of wrestling by following all the groups worldwide. I got to know the Hart family very well, who always welcomed me to their home and treated me with respect and kindness. I especially got to know Bruce, who is both a teacher and friend, was always honest about his views regarding wrestling. After reading reports in the Observer and talking to Bruce on the phone several times, I thought a 24-hour drive to Calgary would be well worth it. Boy, was I wrong. The show sucked. The first 4 matches, particularly the first 2, were worse than any Sid Vicious vs. Night Stalker or Sting vs. Tony Palmore match. 1, 2, 3 Kid vs. Keith Hart was funny because it'll probably never happen again. Kid did the only dive of the night, hitting a plancha which the ref tried to stop him from doing, but he did it anyway. Chris Benoit vs. Rad Radford had that feeling of it could have been. The first 8 minutes had mostly mat work with an occasional spinebuster German suplex or snap suplex to it. I've seen Benoit start plenty of matches like this that turn into 4 stars to 5 stars, but doing it on that night was a mistake. The crowd was dead for it, desperately wanting action, and there were a lot of boring chants. Benoit barely pulled off the superplex because the ropes were very loose. Razor Ramon vs. Owen Hart was good but had a dusty finish. The ring broke because the ropes were so loose. I thought maybe they were going to let Owen win the title because Bruce told me he believed in clean finishes unless there was a purpose not to. Bruce and Brian Pillman vs. Funks was a great brawl with chair shot, table shots, heavy juice. It was an ECW style match which confused me because Bruce told me he was against ECW style. The finish was stupid because after all the illegal brawling, the Funks were DQ'd after Terry hit Bruce with a chair. It was obvious Brett and Davey Boy were holding back for their In Your House match. Matt Amma. Winter Park, California. Awards. I can't believe the extent Paul Heyman pulled the wool over everyone's eyes. In 1994, he convinced everyone that Sabu was the greatest worker in pro wrestling, yet when he went to WCW and New Japan, he proved not only that he's not the greatest worker but he isn't even close to that level. Then came the franchise, Shane Douglas. He was great doing shoot interviews directed at Ric Flair. Douglas was hailed by all as one of the best wrestlers around. But he went to the WWF and proved to everyone that he isn't all that talented when it comes to doing anything but shoot interviews. His skits sucked. His matches sucked. His persona sucked. And his work ethic sucked. When he didn't make it and it was his turn to put people over, he hightailed it out of there. This brings us to Public Enemy, voted number 2 in the Wrestling Observer Awards for Tag Team of the Year and talked about by everyone as being this great working tag team. They came to WCW. They got no heat, and their match against the American Males was really bad. That doesn't bode well since Bagwell and Riggs are the second best team in WCW at this point, behind Harlem Heat. These were the greatest workers in the ECW arena, and none of them looked all that good when they went other places. What all their failures show is how utterly brilliant Paul Heyman is when it comes to manipulating people. The key is manipulating, and it brings me to what made me write this letter. I can't believe Sandman got votes for Most Improved Wrestler. Not only does he look like a drunk Bart Simpson, he also wrestles like him. Is there anything this guy can do in the ring besides guzzle beer, smoke and hit people with a cane? Either his skill has gotten worse, or he was never any good. He's no different from Undertaker. Great gimmick. Lousy wrestler. The only difference is people voted Sandman high in Most Improved, and Undertaker high in Most Unimproved. Oliver Kopp. Germany. ECW. I read with interest the recent reports in the Observer referring to the ECW refund policy when certain advertised talent doesn't appear on a show. For the record, I'm the box office supervisor at most ECW events with the exception of events when the building contract requires box office personnel employed by that particular venue. However, on the 2 dates in question, November 25th in Salisbury, Massachusetts and December 28th in Glenolden, Pennsylvania, it wasn't the exception. Contrary to your published reports in recent weeks, ECW did offer refunds because of the non-appearance of 2 Cold Scorpio Salisbury and Steve Austin and the Heavenly Bodies, Glenolden. Admittedly, there were no signs at either event. However, as per company policy, an announcement was made before the fist match informing patrons that if they wanted a refund, they could get one all the way up until intermission and watch the first half of the show free. It has been my orders to honor the policy since its inception on April 8, 1995. On the 2 dates in question, I can state the only refunds were as follows. In Salisbury, a woman came after the beginning of the show with 2 small children and found the language and level of intensity as too strong and inquired about a refund. I sent word back to the dressing room because I'm not allowed to leave the front door until the end of the show and was given instructions by Paul Heyman to refund their money with a smile, and I did so. No other refunds were requested that evening and I didn't leave my post until 15 minutes after the last match. In Glenolden, a man whose beeper went off due to an emergency at home and due to the building being sold out, a few refunds were given out and they bought tickets to ECW House Party. I can hereby state that I didn't leave my post and hide in the dressing room as one letter accused me of doing. Because we were selling the last of the tickets for our debut show in New York, which took place the next night, and tickets for House Party, I didn't deliver the ticket count or advance money until at least 20 to 25 minutes after the end of the show. I wasn't a hard person to find since I was the only one selling tickets that evening in for the upcoming events. There is no truth to the report that I felt my post to hide in the back. Since the day Todd Gordon hired me for this job through Paul Heyman's obsessive fan-friendly policies, the only mandate that has been drilled into my brain by ECW management has been that the customer is always right. Period. Kathleen Fitzpatrick. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Why are people so reluctant to give ECW a compliment? Why are people so convinced ECW won't make it on a national basis? Paul Heyman's promotion is innovative and is the best promotion in America for many reasons. While the skill level is admittedly all over the board, everyone works to their fullest ability. There are no lazy performers. The other factor in its favor is respect for its audience, a new concept in American wrestling. You pay for action. ECW doesn't cheat you. They deliver the goods, gory or not. Most importantly, they don't make you feel like an idiot. There are reasons why ECW deserves more than a little credit. For all the praise Jim Cornette and Smoky Mountain Wrestling got, they never delivered on these points. Frank Strom. Revere, Massachusetts. Public Enemy is not only one of my favorite tag teams of all time, but to me, they epitomized ECW. Thus it was with mixed emotion that I watched their debut in WCW, a company they were on ECW television mocking not long ago. Their first match wasn't good. They appeared to be a little uneasy getting in the ring before a crowd that wasn't hardcore. They've never been known as smooth technicians. Public Enemy, like the Sandman Gangstas and Tommy Dreamer, got over in ECW because they were willing to work a certain style of match. Some fans may dismiss that version of wrestling as garbage. It still looks like a work because of all the choreographed high spots. But it is a violent style that was rarely seen in the US before ECW and got over as something new, different, and exciting. Although stiff matches are just as fake as the hip toss, arm drag dropkick style, the bouts seem more realistic because the guys essentially beat the crap out of each other. When Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko left, I wasn't overly concerned about the future of ECW. I felt Paul Heyman was creative enough to weather their departures. Guerrero, Malenko and Benoit can get over in WCW because they are among the best workers in the world, despite Hogan's booking, rotten announcing and an old Bo network which continues to push both an outdated style and outdated wrestlers on top. On the other hand, it will be difficult for WCW to use TPE correctly. They need serious mic time to get over. Still, it was cool to see Teddy put Bagwell through a few tables. I'm happy for the benefits they'll receive, such as a real salary and major television exposure. ECW isn't the same without Public Enemy. They were the cornerstones. From the opening montage to the last scene, they were the true stars of ECW. Which is why so many of us voted for them in the awards. Harley York. Bronxville, New York.